Hello and welcome to episode 3 of our brand new Time to Try podcast with Smiling Tri Coach. I'm Kate Offord, and you'll notice today there's different faces on the screen because Mel is in Australia, and it's currently about 3 o'clock in the morning with her. So we did try and persuade her to join in, but she said if she was awake, she would pop on. So if a little face pops up, then that will be Mel. But we really wanted to do this podcast today whilst we could, because it's a really important subject matter. And I think it's a subject matter that will resonate with quite a lot of you out there for many different reasons. So October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And these two lovely ladies here, who are both very close to my heart, have both had similar but obviously quite different also experiences with breast cancer diagnosis in the last 18 months, 2 years. So they're both
2 years for me now.
2 years, yeah. So you're both, it is in very, very much kind of recent memory. So what I thought it would be really sort of interesting to do today is to get Debbie, Debbie give us a wave, and Rachel, give us a wave, to come on and just talk to me about your experiences, because Debbie, I've coached, how long have I coached you for, Debbie?
It's probably about 2 years now.
Yeah, so I've coached Debbie for about 2 years, and we met during lockdown. We met during the virtual challenges that Smiling Tri Coach did, and it was a massive part of both of our lives, wasn't it, those virtual challenges, and we kind of met and bonded over that. And then Rachel I've known since our babies were born, because we were in the same NCT group, but I don't think either of us ever thought that our sort of main coming together would be through our love of running and exercise, and you came to our virtual challenges as well and got really involved and did all the Kona to Christmas challenges, and became like a big part of Smiling Tri Coach. So both of you have always sort of been sporty and into things, but you've both had kind of different relationships with sport as we've gone through. So who should we start off with? Maybe should we go with Debbie, seeing as I've coached you for maybe a little bit longer? So Debbie, do you want to introduce yourself and just sort of tell us a little bit about what's happened in the last couple of years?
Okay, yeah. So I'm obviously Debbie. I had a breast cancer diagnosis and it's very easy to remember because it was December the 31st, 2021. So in the height of COVID, I'd had a normal screening mammogram. So I'd really, really encourage everyone to make sure that they attend their screening mammograms, because I didn't have a lump, so I wouldn't have found my breast cancer without that. And probably just before my mammogram, my husband and I had signed up to do Land's End to John O'Groats. And obviously having a cancer diagnosis slightly puts that into doubt, but I'm fairly determined. And so I decided that it was something that I wanted to do. And with Kate and Mel's help, we looked at how I could train through treatment, so that I would be fit enough to do it, but without actually putting too much stress on my body. So I would say after this, I am a Zone 2 expert. I can pretty much do everything in Zone 2.
And that's not really how you were before, is it?
No, I like
before we worked together, you liked to just sort of hammer on, didn't you?
Yeah. And I'm probably actually, from training more in Zone 2, I'm probably a much stronger cyclist. And I'm probably faster as well, because I don't ever particularly exhaust myself in the way that I would have done before. So I suppose I really avoid now the high intensity sessions, which I used to really enjoy. But now I know that actually the recovery from that would be too long, because I find I still get some fatigue from taking some medication called letrozole.
And so Rachel, what's your kind of experience been in a similar sort of time period? Because I think there's loads of stuff that Debbie said in there which probably
that's a lot of that resonates with me actually, because much the same as Debbie, my breast cancer was discovered through my first mammogram, because I had the joy of turning 50 during lockdown, 6
I mean,
people
you
in the
had a
garden and
pretty
all that.
terrible couple of weeks, though. That couple of weeks was pretty terrible, wasn't it? You know.
No, well, yeah, it was quite funny, wasn't it? Because you did say you'd never quite had the message that I sent you before, and tried hard not to laugh, but it was quite funny because having taken part in the Kona to Christmas training, I had decided that following lockdown and all the rest of it, that I wanted to concentrate more on my running, and that's when I came along to your track sessions, or started coming to your track sessions. And so I think I probably attended one or two. And then unfortunately my daughter got diagnosed with COVID. So we were in lockdown and I got diagnosed with COVID, obviously. And literally the day after we came out of what did you used to call it? You had to be in lockdown and you weren't allowed to go out. I was my recall appointment to the breast clinic, having had my first mammogram. And much like Debbie, it was so small, there was no way I could see or feel anything. So it was complete shock in terms of like, not telling me there's something there that I've not spotted. But much like Debbie, go for that mammogram. You just can't afford not to. And so consequently, I wasn't quite the athlete that Debbie is, I would say.
I don't think any of us are. It's fine.
In all. But through my treatment, which was surgery and radiotherapy, I began to I redevelop my relationship with exercise, in the sense that, much like Debbie, I always thought you just have to go hell for leather, the no pain, no gain, and all that kind of thing. And particularly dealing with fatigue post radiotherapy, I was told by a physiotherapist, it was like little and often will do you a lot more good, rather than, well, I'm really fit because, I run and I do this, that, and the other, so I can walk for ages, and then the next day I'd be completely wiped out. And so consequently, I think probably the same thing, Debbie, the zone 2 thing, which is you don't have to go all out. And I am actually now fitter than I was prior to my diagnosis, through more measured exercise, but in a better way. So, yeah.
So for anyone that's listening that is unsure what the zone 2 kind of buzzword is, so my concern when I was coaching Debbie through her sort of treatment period was that Debbie was pretty determined that she was still going to complete Land's End to John O'Groats in September. And as Debbie said, she got diagnosed on the 31st of December. She also then slipped into conversation that she was going to do London, Amsterdam in June. Which, I am always fully supportive, and I think, I'm never the one that's going to be the person to take your dreams away. But there was a big part of me that was like, wow, how is this going to work? Because Debbie was having surgery and then she was having radiotherapy, and everything that I read about radiotherapy was all about the sort of fatigue that could come with it and could follow it. And there's no rules, are there, in terms of how your body's going to react to radiotherapy. And some people will have a lot more fatigue than others, and others will potentially not have so much. So my whole thing was, how do we help a body to heal by doing the right amount of exercise to enable that to be a good thing, and get a body ready for Land's End to John O'Groats, which is how many kilometers?
It's 1,019 miles.
Oh, so 1,019 miles. So, how do you get a body ready to do 1,019 miles in the context of allowing that body to heal? And then, say that again. Sorry, Rachel.
I didn't say anything.
Oh,
just lost the boot connection.
Flip through. Sorry.
No.
Yeah. So for me, it was like, okay, how do we do this? And in terms of endurance coaching, that low level sustained exercise where you're not really generating very much fatigue, but you are enabling your body to make those adaptations, seemed absolutely perfect. And we had loads of conversations because, and Rachel, I think you will agree with this, Debbie really did want to exercise for your mental health, didn't you? You really wanted to be able to have that outlet to help you cope with the information that was getting thrown at you daily. So if I'd have said to you, well, you can't train, I'm not sure that you would have been particularly receptive to that. And you might have gone,
would you?
Yeah. I would never have said that. So my whole thing was like, how can we enable Debbie to train every day without generating additional fatigue, and to ensure that, yeah, she's getting the adaptation so she can cycle Land's End to John O'Groats in September, but still enable her body to heal. And what we found was, by just sort of monitoring you, I mean, we checked in all the time, didn't we?
Oh yeah, we checked in an awful lot.
Yeah, and every time
and I did. And I was like reasonably sensible. Like I'd occasionally text you and say, "Oh, I'm absolutely shattered today. I'm just not going to do anything." So I did sort of start to recognise the difference between just not feeling like exercising and being really fatigued, and actually it was better to rest.
And I think, Rachel, that you and I have had this conversation about the days when it's just not a good idea.
I think more than anything, going through my treatment, I've learned so much more about my body in terms of how I feel about, how it feels and what I can and cannot do. And I think probably, Debbie, you're probably saying the same thing, really, which is that I know with the fatigue, there are times, even now, even though I'm sort of, I'm literally it's almost 2 years to the day out of treatment. I think I'm going to finish my radiotherapy this day 2 years ago. That on a Friday night, there's times I will sit down, I've been at work all week, and I'm like, oh, I feel like I've got a sore throat, I'm going to be ill. You get that kind of like feeling. And then the next morning, and I'll have a good sleep, and the next morning I'll get up and I'll be absolutely fine. And I've come to recognize that is fatigue. It's not necessarily being, having a virus or whatever, but that's my body telling me you need to rest at that point.
And it's interesting, isn't it, that those signs become kind of much more apparent to you, whereas you might have just sort of cracked on or not realized that you even felt like that. But now you can recognize the signs before they even really come in. We're not in a good place. Debbie's not very well as we're sat here, are you? You've not been very well.
My asthma's playing up a bit. So I have actually probably been off my bike the longest that I've been, I think 2.5 weeks now.
And actually, I would say pre-diagnosis, you would have not got off the bike, because I've known you train through really bad chest infections before, even when you probably shouldn't have done. Whereas now I think you're a little bit more savvy about letting your body just recover.
Yeah, I know it will just take me longer to get better.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing I've learned is patience. And and I sort of help with some counselling through one of the breast cancer charities, and I often hear people saying, well, I can do this and I can do that, and I've done all these things that I do, and I want to do them again. And time and time again, the advice is listen to your body and to learn and to be patient, and it will come. And it is that patience thing, I think, as well. And just trust your coach, because they know what they're doing. And
I would say actually having a coach was probably what actually meant that I could train, because I would sometimes, because there was also a training program going on with the group doing Land's End to John O'Groats, I would occasionally like text Kate and went, can I do this session? And she usually would just reply in a few capitals, no. But I did try it quite frequently.
You did. They were always, when they looked really gnarly, the sessions as well. And you'd be like, maybe this one? And I'd be like, no. No. But and I think that's why it worked. And Rachel, you've always been really good at like talking about stuff, haven't you? And it's you've never held yourselves back, but you go, right, okay, what's the best way to approach this? So how many days were you riding for, Debbie? A lot of days on Land's End to John O'Groats. So
it was 11 days.
Get you ready for that. 11 days of constant riding. And to be fair, Rachel, your life, because I've worked with you on training programs, and I mean, you exercise every day now, don't you? At least.
Yeah, but it's the variety, which was what I was going to come on to, in the sense that as much as I enjoy running, I've come to appreciate the benefits of doing other forms of exercise. So I'm much more dedicated in terms of, or conscious of exercising or not exercising. And I do a regular yoga session, and I do a regular bar class, which is really good for strength and so body conditioning. I also love tap dancing. because it's fun, and I've play a lot more tennis as well these days. So just in terms of my overall fitness and mental health, it's all about the different varieties that I enjoy as much as just running all the time.
Debbie, you've basically taught yourself to swim.
Yeah,
and actually, Rachel, let's talk about swimming.
Oh, yeah,
I always manage to bring these round to swimming. This is brilliant.
I haven't been in a pool since my last lesson with you.
So Debbie has entered quite a few aquabikes, haven't you? And you've completed them, and you can now swim as long as you like. And Rachel, how many lessons did we have?
About 3 or 4.
And you were great.
Yeah. No, it's and I was really conscious of wanting to learn to swim properly, because I'd never really learned to swim properly, because I want to be able to maintain exercise and the ability to exercise, and conscious of having had breast cancer, in terms of life telling me your body's not going to carry on in quite the way you expected, kind of thing, or that you've come to expect. So things may have to change. And so one of the big side effects, certainly with the medication that I know Debbie's on, I'm not currently on that medication, but it may well change, is joint pain. And so I really wanted to make sure that I had an alternative if I couldn't run, was to be able to go and swim, in terms of as a different form of exercise, to get the same just general overall benefits by swimming rather than running.
Can I ask a question to either of you?
Yeah.
So a lot of people have told me about kind of radiation pain, and I think some people are frightened of swimming after having radiation. What was your experience of getting back in the pool, and what was your experience of that sort of pain and discomfort?
I was relatively lucky. Sorry, Debbie, go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't really get an awful lot of radiation pain. I probably still got a little bit of stiffness in my arm, so it's fine for front crawl, but I can't really get my left arm back for back crawl. But that, I think, is more radiation having tightened up everything, because it was fine after surgery. And I think that's slightly frustrating, because I'm pretty anal about doing all my exercises, and I still haven't managed to maintain a full range of movement. I think probably it's probably important for people just to carry on all the time doing their arm exercises, just to maintain that ability. Yeah.
That actually taught me quite a lot, in terms of I'm not quite as sort of fastidious about doing exercises, but as part of your treatment plan, if you have breast cancer and you have surgery, particularly, it's not necessarily the surgery to the breast, but if you have lymph nodes removed, that's a cut under your arm, and that is usually far more painful than anything that you have in the chest area. And when on discharge from hospital, you're given a whole series of exercises to do, and you'll often, I don't know if you've watched videos of people and talk about how far they can get their arm up, and they put their arms up, and how far can I reach, and the physios are like on you to do that all the time. And again, when it comes to having radiotherapy, because part of the physical thing is you have to have your hands behind your head for quite a while, and it just causes a lot of shoulder immobility. So I saw physios as part of my treatment plan, in terms of making sure that I was doing that with my shoulders, and I was absolutely fastidious about doing those exercises. And I really started to feel the benefits of stretching every morning. So now I get a lot more out of doing yoga and Pilates and things like that, because I do really love the stretching feel, not just in my shoulders, but in the rest of my body. I really don't have any problems with mobility at all.
No, that's great.
I suppose also,
Pilates, don't you, Debbie?
Yeah, I do a fair amount. Yeah, also for me, swimming wasn't really an option, because all the pools were shut after my treatment. So it wasn't a time that you could actually swim.
I did swimming then, Debbie.
Pardon?
What made you decide to start swimming?
Oh, because I thought I wanted to do aquabikes, really. I'd done all these crazy cycle challenges, so what was next on the list?
And what is next on the list?
An Ironman aquabike.
Just a small
my goodness.
fry. So what's 3.8k swim and 112 miles?
180k bike ride.
Yeah.
But no run.
No. And I mean, to be fair, if there was a run,
Not that bad.
I was going to say, if there was, if she could do the run, she would. But unfortunately, had is it spinal fusion, which put an end to running career.
Yeah.
Every cloud.
And Rachel, do you set crazy goals and targets like Debbie does, or what's your approach to like motivation for exercise?
No, my motivation for exercise is purely to maintain my mental health, to be honest with you. It's that thing of for me it's the socializing and going out and spending time with other people, and my track sessions. I do notice one of our track colleagues did actually describe his Strava as track and therapy the other day, and I think that's so lovely because we all just go run around in circles, but we get to chat at the end. So yeah, for me it's generally my motivation is based on the fact I got breast cancer, as far as I'm concerned, completely out of the blue. There's no history of it in my family. What causes breast cancer? Who knows? But the big thing in my head, I'm sure Debbie's as well, is recurrence, because you're always going to be at risk of a recurrence, having had it once. And in terms of being what you can do to try and prevent a recurrence, the only thing that they really can tell you to do is exercise. So from my point of view, it's a question of wanting to continue to exercise and enjoy it, and to be able to maintain it in order to maintain the rest of my life.
Now Debbie looks like she's like started
Halloween. Sorry, yeah, I'm just having a bit of trouble with my light. It's decided to go into a disco.
We're like, ooh, ooh.
Yeah.
So you spoke there about sort of breast cancer recurring and reducing your risk. Now, I know from having conversations from both of you that there's a lot of different language around breast cancer and breast cancer awareness. And some of that language you don't find helpful. And I had never known about this. And I think it's a really interesting point to make. I don't know if one of you wants to kind of chat about that.
Yeah, I'll mention there's the charity. It's actually based in Manchester. It used to be known as the Genesis Trust. And my apologies, but I haven't got their exact blurb, but they are, I think, one of the only charities, certainly in the UK, if not the whole of Europe, which is absolutely devoted to finding a cure for breast cancer and finding out what causes it. And it's based here in Manchester. And they used to be known as the Genesis Trust. And I became aware a few years ago that they struggled to fundraise because nobody knew what Genesis Trust did. So they changed their name to Prevent Breast Cancer. So those three words now exist. And, I walk down the street in Breast Cancer Awareness Month here, and, everybody's supporting that charity, Prevent Breast Cancer. And I even ran the Manchester 10K in a Prevent Breast Cancer t-shirt. So there was me thinking I was preventing breast cancer. So when I got my diagnosis, I was like, I want my money back. But it's only through my kind of knowledge and reading and understanding of what this charity does that I realized that Prevent Breast Cancer, there's a bit more to it, and that you can't actually prevent it yourself. You have not got any control over it. All you can do is reduce your risk. And I think Debbie and I had this conversation, prevent yourself from dying, sorry to say that, of breast cancer, by making sure it's caught early. But it does strike me as something, because those words exist, and particularly for younger girls, younger generations who, are living there. We all live our lives differently from our parents, and I'm sure our children will live lives differently from us, in terms of women pursuing careers, getting married, not getting married, having children, not having children. If you do have a child, do you breastfeed or don't you breastfeed? And whether you take contraceptive pills, whether you take HRT, all these things. And sometimes, the words breast cancer are brought up with it. And so getting a diagnosis, I don't think it's uncommon for you to sit there and think, what did I do wrong? If I can prevent it, have I done something? Is there something that I've done in my life previously that's meant I've got breast cancer? The honest answer is no. But I do think it's quite a hard one to get your head around, along with everything else at the start, in terms of, is this my fault? And I do feel it's a bit, and I have actually challenged Prevent Breast Cancer recently. I said, I really don't think your name's very helpful when you get diagnosed. So they said, well, thank you very much for your view. We'll go away and think about it. So, yeah.
I suppose I felt quite differently. And I'm coming from a slightly different, because I'm an oncology nurse as well. And so I've always felt like I got breast cancer because of my age, the fact I'm a woman and I've got breasts, and those are my risk factors, and those are something that I can't do anything about. I mean, I suppose in terms of the language used with cancer, I find it really hard when there's lots of, they lost their fight against cancer, or it was a battle. And I think that's a very emotive subject, because you don't say someone lost their battle against heart disease. And so I think the language used with cancer sometimes has a fault attached with it. You didn't fight hard enough to stay alive. And I also hate the cancer journey, because a journey is something I want to do. And
I think the other one as well is the warriors, isn't it? The breast cancer warriors. So there's no such thing as a breast cancer warrior. Every single breast cancer patient is just somebody who is doing what they've got to do.
Yeah.
It's not, there's no prizes involved. It's like, you've got no choice in this journey. Sorry, Debbie, word journey. You've got no choice in terms of what you've got to do, in terms of getting yourself well again. And you've got to do what you've got to do. And it's not about being brave, or being a warrior, or being positive. Don't have that one. You just got to be positive, just got to be strong. You usually find those are the words used by people who've never actually experienced a cancer diagnosis. It's a question of going, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah. I mean, I found for my mental health, like being on my bike is just so good. It's my happy place. I go out with friends, have a great cycling community. I mean, across the country, because I come up to Yorkshire to cycle with friends. And that, those friends, really helped me through all my treatment.
Yeah, I mean, the Cogs and Roses a shout out, Debbie.
Oh yeah, Cogs and Roses were absolutely amazing. I have to say they're a brilliant bunch, and they were great. I got loads of cards through the post, some very rude actually, I have to say, but it was really, really nice, and just lots of messages, and that you don't have to reply to, which is really good, because sometimes you just think, no, I don't actually really want to talk to anyone today.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think having a cancer diagnosis does make you really find out who your friends are.
Definitely. And to understand the importance of those friends and doing those things. And what I was just going to say is sort of when I'm sort of counselling people who've just had a diagnosis, or they're waiting to hear, they've had that recall and they've gone for the tests, and they're sitting there going, oh my goodness, what am I facing? And their minds are racing, because while you're waiting, and I think most people will tell you that the worst part of any treatment is the not knowing what you've got and what your treatment plan is, because you just imagine all sorts of things. And once you know what your diagnosis is, what your treatment plan is, it's much more manageable. But it's dealing with that anxiety. And time again, the best advice that we offer to people is go and find your happy place. Go off and do that thing that makes you happy, and it takes your mind somewhere else, because believe it or not, worrying is not going to change anything. It's not going to change the outcome in any way. So having that outlet is so important.
And what kind of outlets have you both found? So I know, Debbie, you've obviously had the cogs and roses in your cycling. Like what is helpful?
I would say talking to friends. So I find it really good to talk to friends, and it's very good to talk to friends who've had breast cancer because they really get where you're coming from. I mean,
It's a massive difference.
Yeah, I've used breast cancer now, and we also have a really good Maggie's where I live. So I've used
I've
both.
done the same. I did the same as you, Debbie. Yeah.
And then I also
personally, for me,
I volunteered for someone like me. So I talk to other women who are having similar treatments to the treatment that I had. And actually that's, I mean, I think really helps them, but actually it also makes you realise how far you've come.
Yeah, for me personally, as Kate knows, that I lost my dad in very tragic circumstances at the age of 13, and it was part of my diagnosis and going through my breast cancer treatment has made me appreciate so much about the effect that has actually had on me later in life, but in a good way, in the sense that because of what happened when I was young, I've grown up thinking I've got to do everything on my own or I don't need help. And, I didn't want to burden my mum because I'd lost my dad and I was so independent and so like, no, I'll do this on my own. So in my head, it was like, oh, it's only a very small tumour. So, compared to what happened to me when I was 13, it's like, I can deal with this. And I was so wrong, so wrong. And it was at that point that I realised, because I thought, why do I need a support service? Why do I need to go and speak to somebody about it? It's just a little thing. But it was only when I then got a chance to chat with a friend of mine whose mum had been through breast cancer. I chatted with her mum and I went and spoke. I went to the Maggie's Centre here in Manchester as well, and then got involved just talking to other people. And there is no substitute. And you, as they say, strangers are just friends you've not met yet. So you go and talk to people and it's amazing who you find.
Yeah, I love that. Like strangers, just friends you haven't met yet. That's a lovely way to think about it. And I think both of you go on, sorry.
I was just going to say, the other thing is that I've discovered is that in breast cancer world, it is literally filled with some of the kindest, loveliest people you will ever meet. We sort of all run around in our little bubbles, but there's no judgment. There's all this, a lot of things we say, there's no such thing as a silly question. If it matters to you, it matters. Ask the question. There's nothing wrong with asking that. There's obviously lots of lovely people who exist outside breast cancer world, but pretty much everybody you will meet is just they just know.
So what advice would you give to somebody who is kind of maybe where you were 18 months, 2 years ago, and having had a diagnosis and wanting to kind of navigate that next path as, I don't know, easily is the wrong word, isn't it? I'm going to say the wrong thing, but what advice would you give them to navigate that? And what if they have got a big challenge like you had, Debbie? What would you ever do anything different? Either of you?
I probably wouldn't. I mean, I think for me, the London to Amsterdam was quite tough, but I did also do it just after COVID as well. So it was only 5 weeks after my radiotherapy, and I had COVID. I was only clear from COVID about 10 days before I went.
Yeah, because you got COVID really sort of in that critical period between the end of the radio. Yeah, you did.
Yeah. So, but I think, I mean, for me, Land's End to John O'Groats was a bit more than just a cycle challenge. It was proving to myself that my body could still do amazing things. And so actually having achieved that, I actually felt much better mentally, and much stronger mentally than I had before I did it. But I think that was just getting confidence back in that my body could still do amazing things.
Was it like a bit of more of a sense of trust that maybe your body was going to respond how you might have expected it to?
Yeah. I mean, and I was tired, obviously, when we finished Land's End to John O'Groats, but I wasn't like completely wrecked.
Well, you were still planning
I was
the next
starving.
time.
Yeah, I mean, I was starving. That was the main thing. I couldn't stop eating for about 4 days. But, you know, I think I was back on my bike about day 4 or 5. I mean, just a gentle cycle, nothing dramatic. But I wasn't, I mean, I was obviously exhausted at the end of each day. But, you know, you get up, do the same repeat each day.
Can't go in the zone there.
Yeah. It did feel a little bit like Land's End to John O'Groats came at a good time in terms of drawing a line under that kind of treatment period.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And then almost like once you'd done Land's End to John O'Groats, it was almost like you could go, right, now this is where I kind of rebuild. That's how it looked a little bit from the outside.
I mean, it definitely
I don't know if it felt like that.
And being back at work was better after I'd done Land's End to John O'Groats. My head was in just a much better place, and it was easier. So it was quite not only a big challenge, but just like, I suppose a reset.
What about you, Rachel? Is there anything you would advise or do differently?
I probably would have asked for help a bit earlier on in the process, in terms of reaching out to the breast cancer support unit, in terms of, you know, and learning that the effect that it has on you emotionally and psychology is not dictated by the size of your tumor or the treatment plan that you have. So yeah, I think for me, that's what I would have done differently. And I would have managed the mental side a bit better at that point. But I think I talk about having my BBC life and my ABC life, which is before breast cancer and after breast cancer. And somewhat bizarrely, I actually think my ABC life is better than it was before, in a slightly perverse way, just because I've learned so much more about myself. I see life very differently. I'm not quite as competitive as I used to be. I'm much more happy with knowing what I can do and being really pleased with what I do achieve, as opposed to thinking I haven't achieved things. And a bit of patience. And it's all sort of, I feel like it's trusting your body again. And I do relate to that one a lot. And I remember reading somebody saying about how a breast cancer lady who'd gone to a yoga class and you were told to hug your body. And she said, and that was the point she broke down and cried and realized that even though she had this horrible thing in her breast, which had caused all sorts, her body was still an amazing thing that could do amazing things. And it's having that faith and trust in your body, isn't it, Debbie? Even though it's seemingly let you down by this horrible thing happening.
But then that goes a little bit back to the language, isn't it? It's like we talk in very much like somehow your body has let you down, whereas actually in the language that you used earlier, you know, you were afflicted by this illness because you're a female and you have breasts, which gives you a risk factor. It's not anything that, you know, your body's done to you.
No.
But I guess it's trying to rationalize that is hard, and it's taken you a long time to get to that point, isn't it?
I mean, I would say the important thing, and this is probably one of the hardest things to do, is to be kind to yourself.
Yeah, I'd agree.
And to seek out the support, because there are a lot of support networks out there which are absolutely amazing. You know, because it's there for you and it's not a sign of weakness.
No, I've learned the meaning of the word self-care. I didn't know what that really meant prior to having my diagnosis and treatment. You know, it's okay to just sit there and do nothing. It's fine. That's all you can manage, then that's fine.
Yeah.
And so if there's those sort of networks, if there's any that you think are useful, I can put them in their notes so that if anybody is looking for that bit of support, if there's any that you think
the main one is the main one is Breast Cancer Now, and Breast Cancer Now is the coming together of a number of breast cancer charities, I think, Debbie, isn't it? I think you probably know a bit more than I do. And they are the sort of primary breast cancer charity in terms of providing support, and they've got lots of different ways of supporting, haven't they, Debbie? They've got online forums, which I'm very active on. There's Someone Like Me service.
There's a moving forward course they do.
Moving forward courses. I've met a lady who runs those. I've met up with some other volunteers that do that. They have a breast cancer helpline, nurses who I've never spoken to them myself, but everybody who
I have.
Says they're really good. Yeah, really, really good.
And they also have an organisation that they work with about helping if you're having a problem with work and rights. There's, I can't remember what it's called, but it's really, really good.
And there's sort of generally outside of breast cancer, there's obviously Maggie's, which if you're lucky enough to live near to a Maggie's centre, I would urge anybody just to walk through the door of it, because they are the most beautiful places. And again, just filled with the most beautiful of people. And they're for everybody who's affected by cancer. So particularly families, you know, if you're supporting someone going through a cancer treatment, you know, you're just as welcome through a Maggie's door as if you're the patient themselves.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then of course Macmillan. I haven't personally reached out to Macmillan, but again, that's what they're there for. They're there to support you, and again, they can help with practical advice as well.
So Debbie, I know you tried some mindfulness and meditation.
Yeah.
I know you've got your own experience of that. Did you try anything like that, Rachel? Has that sort of been
I do it all the time. I love it. Yeah. I'm a big fan of mindfulness and meditation. I use the Headspace app quite regularly. I was using it a bit before, but it's really come into its own now to help me sort of just ground myself, not just in relation to sort of my cancer stuff, but life generally. It just helps me sort of get myself, you know, if I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed, or, you know, I've gone into work and, you know, I will often take myself off and use some of the techniques within the Headspace app. I find it really, really helpful. So yeah, I'm a big fan. And as part of the yoga practice that I do every week. I only do it once a week, but I love it.
Yeah, I'm not very good at mindfulness, except if I'm out on my bike or walking. I can't do it sitting still. It just, my mind goes off to too many other things. I've really tried, and it just doesn't work for me. But it works for me out on my bike. I can be in the here and now. And I don't think it matters how you do it.
Yeah.
You have to do it how it works for you.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, actually, they probably do more mindfulness or meditation. You know, it's the same thing, more than they actually realize. I think we probably do it without realizing that's what we're doing sometimes. You know, there's such big sort of noise about this is a new thing, but it's not really, because we're doing it. It's that thing that makes your mind not think about everything else, isn't it? So yeah, if it's on your bike, or whether it's running or swimming or whatever it is.
Well, I think, endurance sport is absolutely perfectly placed for that kind of thing. It's like repetitive movements, isn't it? And, you know, any triathlete that's tried to learn to swim, you just obsess about the angle that your, you know, right arm is going to enter the water, and you are living in that moment of, you know, how does the water feel? How am I pushing through? When am I going to breathe? So endurance sport as a whole is a great way to kind of immerse yourself, I think. So I know, Debbie,
when you're trying not to drown, you can't really think about too much else.
Have you been like trying not to drown often? Is this a thing that happens?
Well, it feels like that sometimes when you're swimming. Yeah. I mean, I still got a way to go on my swimming technique, but you know, it's still better than it was.
You have made great progress, haven't you? You have.
Oh yeah, no, actually, I'm much stronger than I was, but I'm still slower than a snail.
Probably, but I'm probably slower than you, Debbie. I'm pretty confident on that one.
But you see, this is a proper triathlon conversation, because triathletes will always try and slow their swim, because they're always like, oh no, I'm slower. No, I'm slower.
It's actually really, what's really good is when you go open water swimming in like an open session, just not with your tri club, because then you realise you're a load faster than loads of people there. It's just that you're always swimming with triathletes who some are like whippets, and then that makes you think you're really slow. But if you just swim with like Joe Public, you just think, oh, actually, I've overtaken 7 people today, and that's really exciting.
Oh, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. It is good, and I think, you know, like open water swimming is great for mental health. There's loads of proven benefits of cold water swimming, cold water immersion, and all of that stuff. So any sort of kind of flip from your reality is quite good to do in the water. And I do like your analogy of like just try not to drown.
Yeah.
Where I think there's catfish, and I always try not to think about the catfish, but I've only ever thought about them once, and I swam out. I was living my best life, and I had the number 1 in my hand, and it suddenly dawned on me, like, I'm number 1. No one else has got in yet. It's just me and the catfish, and the kayak hadn't even come out yet. So that was like my true reflection of like, oh my God, I'm going to get eaten alive, and no one's actually going to know.
Yeah, I think also the other important thing is that we've sort of mentioned, but exercise actually reduces your risk of recurrence of breast cancer.
Yeah,
it's probably one of the biggest factors.
And do you know what the science around that is, or you know?
I think there are quite a lot of papers on it. Yeah, and I think it's obviously keeping your weight. So I think there's 3 main things. It's keeping your weight down and also not having much alcohol.
Yeah, it's reducing alcohol consumption is a big factor, isn't it?
Yeah, those are the three sort of, probably the 3 things that you can affect to reduce your risk of recurrence.
And you said
I think
very nice.
I don't think we can finish without mentioning Dr. Liz, Debbie.
Oh right, yeah, no, there is someone that I think quite a lot of people, Liz O'Riordan, who was an ex breast cancer surgeon, and she's a real advocator for breast cancer and women, and also, you know, expelling some of the myths. So she'll go on, and when, you know, some wacky diet comes out, and I love her phrase, because she says this is nutribolics. You know, not eating sugar will help you stop your cancer come back. And she'll just go, well, your body's going to change whatever you eat into sugar. So, you know, as long as you're eating healthily, it doesn't matter. So she's really good, because she just says it like it is.
I think it's good to have such a sort of confident voice that you know that you can trust, because there is so much noise out there, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. And there is a load of rubbish on the internet. And I think that's why using places like Breast Cancer Now for information are much, much safer than going on some of the wacky websites that will say if you do this diet, you'll be absolutely fine, because there's no evidence of that at all.
Yeah. There's often one of the questions commonly asked is you know, is it because I've eaten? Is it my diet? What can I change in my diet? And it's the same answer that for anything, which is a healthy, varied diet is the best thing you can have. It's, you know, plenty of fruit and vegetables. There's, you know, it's no science, not any science in there. It's common sense in terms of that's the message that we should be, you know, your cancer diagnosis doesn't make any difference in that sense. You know, it's the same advice that you would have anyway, which is eat a healthy diet. You know, your plant-based stuff, you're avoiding ultra-processed food. It's all quite simple, really, isn't it?
I mean, probably the thing that anyone on, other than tamoxifen, anyone on the hormone therapies needs to be aware of, making sure that they're getting enough calcium in their diet, just because of the effects that knocking out all your estrogen can have on your bone health. So, I mean, that's the only thing that you need to think about in your diet. And there are lots of calculators that you can go online and work out whether your diet has enough calcium in. And it's fairly easy.
Invariably, you'll be prescribed a supplement, I think, because I'm on those, even though I'm on tamoxifen.
where I'm
Yeah,
treated,
no.
I prefer you to try to do it diet-wise because you absorb it
That's
better.
interesting. That's
Really?
interesting.
That's interesting. And what's the advice about sort of strength work?
To do resistance stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, to do it regularly. I think about 3 times a week they recommend.
Yeah,
just
that's
to try.
sort of part of the reason why I do my bar class, which is strength and resistance work, which it has lots of benefits. Number one, I love my teacher so much.
I love your teacher. I mean, her teacher is amazing. We've got to give a big shout out to Rachel Wrigley, haven't we?
Yeah.
She still looks about 17. I don't even know how old she is, but I think she's just had a birthday.
You don't know how she's
Well, I
50.
do, but
Did
she
you not
still
notice
looks about
this
17. A year of celebrations. But yeah, so the bar work gives you 6-pack apparently.
Well, we look at Rachel. But yeah, it's nice. It's good fun. It's sort of dance based, sort of ballet based, which I really enjoy as well. And music and it just makes me feel strong. And I did manage to carry on my bar classes through my treatment. Just when my arm was a bit weak or whatever, I just adapted the exercises. But it all helped with the mental health in terms of I can still do this, even though that sort of thing in your head, which is my life's over because I've got breast cancer. No, it's not. It's like, right, just got to change things a little bit and we'll carry on as normal.
But I think that's...
I think probably the thing I should say is that you do need to take notice of what your medical team looking after you are telling you to do. So, I was told I couldn't go on my bike for 10 days after my surgery, and then I had to cycle indoors for 6 weeks. And I did actually do that because you'd be crazy not to. But so I think you have to adapt your treatment around what's sensible given what surgery that you've had. So I went on my turbo and then I walked outside to get my fresh air. So in fact, it was great because I got 2 lots of exercise without tiring myself out.
You did have your drain balanced on your bike at one point, which we did have a conversation about whether we needed to be on the bike whilst we needed the drain, but you said that you did. So Dr. hadn't said you shouldn't. So
no. So they hadn't said I shouldn't. So I just thought it fits really well in that little tri bag on your handlebar. It was perfect.
But I think what you've both proved is that if you listen to the advice, you can still continue to do the things that you love, and actually the things that you love become even more important in terms of your sort of long-term health and that kind of risk of recurrence. I think that's the bit that I probably didn't know as much about, is like actually what you're doing now is so important to building trust and confidence. And
I think the other thing to say, that which you don't necessarily appreciate until you get that diagnosis, is that you hear about people in the news. Obviously you hear about breast cancer and people going through breast cancer treatment and dying from breast cancer, and so you can get this idea that, oh my goodness, my life's over. But the reality is that treatment for breast cancer has come a massive way in the last 20 years, especially the development of these drugs which help prevent recurrence. And the fact is, it's far more prevalent than you realise. And it's only when you start to say, I've got breast cancer, and somebody goes, oh yeah, that happened to me 20 years ago. I had breast cancer. It's like there are far more people walking around who have breast cancer treatment than you probably realise. So and you will, if you're given a diagnosis, you will be told it is treatable in any sense. You will always be given a treatment. They will hope to cure you, and in most cases they will.
Well, that's probably a really positive, excellent note to finish on. And you're both really inspiring in terms of your sporting prowess and what you've achieved, and kind of that breast cancer has been a big lump in the road, but you have managed to ride that bike, Debbie, a lot despite that. And Rachel, I think you always say, because we've got photographs, haven't we, of like when we first met, and you're like you're like a different person now almost when
I
you look
am.
at these
There's one
photos.
particular photo of you that you put up, Kate, regularly on Facebook. I'm like, no.
That's not
It
me.
just reminds me of how where.
No. Well, thank you both so much for talking to me. And I think you've both sort of made some really excellent points, and hopefully there's lots of people out there who are nodding, or they know someone who could be nodding. And I think it will be a useful and interesting podcast for people to listen to. So thank you both very much. And
No problem.
the next
You're
podcast,
welcome.
I think Melanie will be back. She doesn't like it when I call her Melanie. I think she'll be back because she's in Australia at the moment. She's going to be racing at Noosa Triathlon, which is one of the most famous triathlons in Australia. And she hopefully is going to talk to me about that when she's done it. So hopefully she doesn't get eaten by a shark, because there are sharks in our water, but it's all going to be good. So thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Rachel. And I will see everybody very soon.
Bye.
Bye.